In August 2023, the Albanese government said age verification technology was too immature to even trial. 14 months later, they made it a law, which took a short window of only 3 weeks to pass. It was the same government, the same ministers, and the same technology capability. What were the driving forces that changed? I've investigated what pressured our government to implement a draconian system, and you guessed it, lobbying by the media and political pressure is the answer. We're going to cover 3 key topics where you'll find out the truth behind age verification. In number 1, the government's own documentation saying that the technology wasn't even ready to implement an age ban. Number 2, every actor who lobbied and applied pressure on the government in the 14 months between it's not ready and age verification becoming national law. And number 3, why the 2 sides you were told were fighting each other ended up on the same side building the same thing, and why one of them is now using the Australian playbook to lobby Europe and the United States. On the 31st of August 2023, Communications Minister Michelle Rowland released the eSafety Commissioner's roadmap for age verification. This roadmap recommended a pilot, a controlled trial of age assurance technology based on protecting against adult content and wagering sites, also known as betting. And at this stage, the public thought that this was unrealistic and impossible, and so did the Labor government. The government's response in writing was no. And in their words, the technology was too immature, and they cited even privacy and security risks, as well as the effectiveness and accuracy. All of them, and I'm quoting the government's own response, meant that a decision to mandate age assurance is not ready to be taken. That's the Albanese government in writing. There is no mandate for further studies or let's park this one and I'll look at it later. It was an explicit refusal. So either the technology magically matured between August 2023 and November 2024, or somebody changed their minds. And let me talk you through who. From the time of the not ready statement to completely changing their mind was only a short 6 months. And on the 29th of February 2024, Meta or Facebook announced that they weren't renewing the news media bargaining code. And if you don't know what that is, it's about $70 million in a year of payments that was going to the Australian media. All of the important news agencies in Australia and around the world lose a huge chunk of revenue overnight. News Corp, 9 News, and even the ABC, who were using it to fund regional journalists. It's really not a small loss. And as we know, legacy media is dying and Australian newspaper advertising revenue is on a steady decline. News Corp 9 and 7 were watching their platform revenue stream evaporate because of Meta's decision. Meta walking away from the bargaining code wasn't an attack specifically on us in Australia. They shut it down worldwide. They shut down Facebook News completely globally in the same month. But walking away from this deal caused a ripple effect. The Murdoch family, who owns News Corp and Nova Entertainment on radio, was suddenly very motivated to hurt Meta back for taking their revenue chunk. And 10 weeks later, they did. In May 2024, News Corp launched a media campaign across every single major institution they own. The Australian, the Daily Telegraph, the Herald Sun, the Courier Mail, the Adelaide Advertiser, and it was called Let Them Be Kids, using a change.org petition, which eventually collected over 54,000 signatures. The campaign's central demand, a national social media age limit set at 16. Then coincidentally, in the same month of May 2024, a second campaign appeared, pitched as a grassroots campaign led by parents with a mental health focus and a radio host as a figurehead. The campaign was called 36 Months. 36 Months was founded in a boardroom meeting between 3 men. Michael Whipper Whipley, the Nova radio breakfast host, Rob Galuzzo, founder of an advertising production company called Finch, and Greg Atwells, who is Finch's head of communications, who was simultaneously listed on LinkedIn as 36 Months managing director for the next 7 months. ASIC's corporate findings found 36 Months has exactly 2 shareholders, Whipper's personal company and Finch. They are all connected. So this grassroots, parent-led mental health campaign was a wholly owned subsidiary of an advertising agency. And here's the important note that you need to understand. Let's review how these organizations are linked. Whipper works at Nova Radio, and Nova is owned by Nova Entertainment. Nova Entertainment is owned by Illyria Pty Ltd, and Illyria is Lachlan Murdoch's private investment company. 2 parallel campaigns launched at similar times that seem entirely independent. But if we track them back to full ownership, we can see that all roads lead back to the same source, the Murdoch media. This campaign for the ban was meant to seem like it was coming from parents to help their children. In reality, it was a fully corporate push with their own agenda in mind. Finch, for example, is an advertising production company. They make ads for a living. And since 2017, Finch has produced major advertising campaigns for gambling companies, TAB, Sportsbet, and some other companies. In 2024, the same year that Finch founded a child protection lobby group, Finch was simultaneously producing a Get Your Bet On campaign. And that campaign became one of the most complained about advertisements in New Zealand for the year. So remember, the original recommendation at the top of this video was to protect children from online gambling and adult content. Finch was promoting gambling while also wanting to protect children. Make that make sense. An advertising agency that makes gambling commercials funded by a lobby group whose stated purpose is to protect kids from gamified online interactions that make using the service highly addictive. They are literally describing themselves. And the story gets even more juicy. In November 2025, the Albanese government quietly abandoned the Murphy Report's recommendation, which was a total ban on gambling advertising. A bipartisan recommendation that had sat on the government's desk for 2.5 years. The gambling ad-funded campaign succeeded twice, once to ban Meta from kids, and once to kill the gambling ad campaign. They seemingly used the social media ban as a story that buried the controversial gambling ad ban. So where was the government in all of this? There's a lot of things happening in parallel here. With the media campaigns, there were also political agendas at play. On the 10th of November 2024, Newspoll published its weekly result. And for the first time in the entire parliamentary term, Peter Dutton's net approval edged ahead of Anthony Albanese. And just 11 days later, on the 21st of November, the social media ban bill was introduced into Parliament. You might remember that the public submission window was only 24 hours, barely any time for people to voice their concerns. The Senate committee inquiry was 3 hours, and the Senate had 4 working days to consider the age threshold. For a bill that the Australian Human Rights Commission had warned would have unintended consequences, the Parliament gave it less scrutiny than a routine departmental reshuffle. And to understand just how rushed the bill was, we can compare it to the Murphy Report, which we spoke about earlier, on gambling advertising. 2.5 years it was sitting on the desk, with 31 recommendations, and it still has not been fully implemented. But the under-16 social media ban, which politically could boost the Prime Minister's back in the polls, was only sitting there for 3 weeks. That is not how a government allocates parliamentary time when it's being driven by science or by a grassroots campaign. That's how a government allocates parliamentary time when it's being driven by polling and pressure. At this stage in the story, the pressure was working. VPN searches in Australia have exploded. The government keeps rolling out age verification laws, and every time they do, more of us are forced to hand over personal information just to use the internet. But this video is sponsored by Obscura VPN, a privacy-first VPN that approaches the problem differently. We talk a lot about identity on this channel, and most people don't realize that traditional VPNs see both who you are and every site that you visit. Your name, email, browsing history, and any data transfers. Obscura is different. It physically and cryptographically cannot link who you are with what you do online. Instead of linking your email address, name, or any other personal information to create an account, Obscura just provides you a randomized account number, ensuring none of your search history comes back to you. Their VPN method ensures traffic is split across multiple relays, similar to Tor. No single party ever sees the full picture. This is a real form of anonymity. Not just from the big tech companies, it also ensures that the VPN provider isn't also spying on you. I've been testing Obscura, and it's fast, lightweight, and lets you select locations around the world. Head over to obscura.com/techwin or use TechWin at checkout for a 25% discount. That's TECHWIN. The link is in the description. Let's take our privacy back. Now, here's the part that almost nobody in the Australian media has connected. We were told that this was a Murdoch versus Facebook or Meta, a traditional media company against a tech giant, a David and Goliath story, but it really wasn't. While Meta was publicly fighting the ban in the press, Meta was simultaneously sitting at the same table as the Australian government, helping build the biometric infrastructure that would enforce it. Meta and Snapchat submitted a joint expression of interest to the Australian government's age assurance technology trial. The same 2 companies publicly opposing the ban were working together to enforce the ban. But Meta wanted the benefits of a social media ban without doing the hard work. Their solution wasn't a way to keep verifying ages on Instagram. Their proposal was titled, in their own words, App Store/operating system level age verification. Their formal proposal to the trial was to try and get someone else to do the age verification instead of them. Behind the scenes, Meta wasn't against age verification. They've never been against age verification. What they were against was being forced to do it themselves. And we know this from other international stories because Meta is openly doing it. In February 25, Meta, X, and Snap submitted a joint letter to the South Dakota lawmakers explicitly backing a state bill that would put age verification on the app stores. Not the platforms, they don't want to have to do it themselves, but on Apple and Google in their platform stores only. And it's landing in Australia exactly the same way. Apple has begun rolling out the App Store age checks in Australia, ahead of the September 2026 implementation deadline. It's a sleight of hand. The public perceived fight was Murdoch versus Meta, but at the end of 2026, the architecture being deployed underneath the law is exactly the architecture Meta proposed in its trial submission. Apple and Google are left holding the bag. Murdoch was making the noise through their campaigns, Meta was lobbying behind the background for the infrastructure, and now the Australian public are being the supplier of their biometric data. So the exemptions from different platforms that we heard about a year ago are starting to make sense when you follow the rabbit hole. Originally, YouTube was guaranteed an exemption. Communications Minister Michelle Rowland personally promised the global head of YouTube the platform would be carved out or excluded before the public consultation. Bloomberg obtained a Freedom of Information documents proving in April 2025 that this happened. In June 2025, after months of public pressure and a recommendation from the e-safety commissioner herself, YouTube was brought back in. But the receipt for the original deal is still there. The minister was prepared to guarantee an exemption to the biggest platform Australian teenagers actually use by handshake before public consultation. And it's not just YouTube. The full list of services excluded from the ban includes Discord, Messenger, WhatsApp, and a lot more. Discord, where teenagers actually congregate and was a major part of the Charlie Kirk story, if you get my reference. Or Roblox, that's been a hive for predators to meet children. If you sat down to design a law that banned children from social media, and then you exempted these platforms, you've not banned children from social media. You've rearranged a small portion of their attention from a set of services to another set of services. These weren't original oversights. They were exemptions that proved the law wasn't doing what the press release said it would. And if you wanted to protect children, this isn't the law that you would write. All of this is about to change, and you can see that in a recent video I made about the Children's Privacy Act coming in 2026, because they're coming for everything. So let's pull the threads together just as we want to close them. Loop 1, Michelle Rowland initially refused to pilot age assurance because it was immature, but personally guaranteed YouTube an exemption from the law. What made Michelle Rowland change her mind between August 2023 and November 2024? She didn't change her mind about the technology, and both decisions track corporate accommodation, not technology readiness. Loop 2, what did News Corp do about losing $70 million a year from Meta? They built a national campaign across 5 mastheads that seemed unrelated. Then they ran a petition of over 54,000 signatures. They lit the Sydney Harbour Bridge with their campaign slogan, and they got the Prime Minister to thank News Corp in his press conference. They didn't just lobby, they wrote the policy and got billed thanks for it. Loop 3, what actually changed between not ready to mandate in 2023 and national law in 2024? Any harm done to children online didn't change, nor did the capability of the technology to implement this. The trial that ran in 2025 used the same family of biometric tools that existed in 2023. What changed was the political price of saying no. The children didn't change, the technology didn't change, the privacy concerns didn't change, the science didn't change. What changed was this. A media conglomerate lost $70 million per year, a prime minister fell behind in the polls, a gambling advertising agency built a moral panic campaign, and a radio host fronted it. Meta got the regulatory precedent it had been lobbying for transplanted to Australian soil. The age assurance vendors got a legally mandated market for their product. Every party at the table got what they wanted. You didn't get what you wanted. We weren't at the table. The protect children framing wasn't the policy. It was a product label. This is not a child safety law. It is a regulatory capture of the Australian internet dressed up as one. And you paid for it with your taxes. And now your children need to scan their faces. Australia was the test case. The same architecture that we have here now is now being lobbied for, jurisdiction by jurisdiction, all around the world. Meta is currently pushing the same App Store age verification model in the UK, the European Union, and the US states. The companies you were told fall for this in Australia are not fighting, they're lobbying for it everywhere else, in real time, and using Australia as their proof point. They say, look, the Australian government did it, Australia did this, Australia survived, the architecture works, now do the same. We are just the test case. I really appreciate you watching. If you got this far, please like and subscribe, it means a lot to me. Thank you.